What happens when a beloved chat show host refuses to play along with carefully crafted royal narratives? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry's media tour takes a shocking turn on the Graham Norton Show. Last night's episode delivered the most explosive confrontation in the show's history, with tensions reaching a boiling point that left viewers stunned and one very angry Duke storming off set. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Graham Norton decides he's had enough of royal spin and starts asking the questions everyone's been thinking. The evening started innocuously enough. Prince Harry had arrived at BBC's television centre, looking polished and media-trained, ready to promote his latest charitable initiative. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement, phones discreetly positioned to capture any memorable moments. Graham Norton, known for his cheeky humor and ability to get celebrities to let their guard down, seemed genuinely pleased to welcome the Duke of Sussex to his famous red chair. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Graham announced with his trademark grin as Harry strode onto the set wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, his PR team watching nervously from the wings. The applause was thunderous, the atmosphere electric. Harry settled into the chair with practiced ease, flashing that familiar smile that had charmed millions worldwide. "Harry, welcome to the show. How are you finding life these days?" Graham began, his tone warm but his eyes already showing hints of mischief. The question seemed innocent enough, but those familiar with Norton's interviewing style knew he was simply warming up his engines. "Thank you for having me, Graham. Life is good, really good. I'm focusing on the things that matter most: my family, my work with various charities, and trying to make a positive impact," Harry responded smoothly, his media training evident in every carefully chosen word. "That's wonderful to hear," Graham nodded, before leaning forward slightly. "Now, you've been quite vocal about your experiences with the British press. Some might say you've built quite a career out of criticizing the very institution that gave you your platform. How do you respond to those who feel you're biting the hand that fed you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harry's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, a micro-expression that Graham's keen eyes didn't miss. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the subtle change in atmosphere. "I think that's a rather simplistic way of looking at it, Graham," Harry replied, his voice carrying a slight edge. "I've never criticized the institution itself. I've spoken about the need for accountability, transparency, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's not biting anyone's hand. That's being responsible." Graham raised an eyebrow, his famous smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Responsible? Some might argue that airing private family matters on international television isn't particularly responsible. Your father is the king now, after all. Don't you think there's a time and place for family grievances?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Harry's posture stiffened, his hands gripping the arms of his chair slightly tighter. The casual, friendly chat was rapidly morphing into something far more confrontational. "My father and I have our differences, yes, but I've always been clear that my issues are with the system, not with individuals," Harry said, his voice becoming more clipped. "And frankly, Graham, I'm surprised you'd suggest that speaking one's truth is somehow irresponsible. Isn't that what good journalism is supposed to be about?" "Oh, absolutely," Graham agreed with theatrical enthusiasm. "Truth is paramount, which is why I'm curious about some of the contradictions in your narrative. You've spoken extensively about wanting privacy, yet you've written books, done interviews, appeared on podcasts, and now you're here promoting another project. How do you reconcile that desire for privacy with what appears to be a very public campaign?" The question hit its mark. Harry's jaw tightened visibly, and several audience members exchanged glances. His PR handler in the wings made a subtle gesture toward the production team, but Graham was just getting started. "I think you're mischaracterizing what I've said," Harry responded, his voice rising slightly. "There's a difference between choosing to share your story on your own terms and having lies and invasive stories printed about you without your consent. Surely even you can understand that distinction." "Of course I can," Graham replied smoothly. "But here's what I find interesting. And please, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't you and your wife built essentially a media empire based on your royal connections? Netflix deals, Spotify contracts, speaking engagements that reportedly command hundreds of thousands of pounds. It seems like you've monetized the very institution you claim has caused you so much pain. The studio fell silent except for the quiet hum of cameras. Harry's face flushed slightly, his carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. This wasn't going according to the script his team had prepared him for. That's a gross oversimplification, and you know it, Harry shot back, his voice now carrying unmistakable irritation. Everything we've done has been about service, about using our platform to highlight important causes and give voice to the voiceless. If you want to reduce that to mere commercialism, that says more about your perspective than ours. Graham leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the rising tension. Fair enough, but let's talk about service then. Your grandmother devoted her entire life to duty and service, never once publicly criticizing the institution or airing family grievances. She understood that sometimes personal feelings must be subordinated to the greater good. Do you ever wonder what she would think about your current approach? The mention of the late Queen struck a nerve. Harry's eyes flashed with anger, and his voice took on a harder edge. Don't you dare presume to speak for my grandmother, or suggest what she would think. You didn't know her. I did. And I know she would want her family to be happy and authentic, not trapped in a system that made you who you are? Graham interrupted smoothly. That gave you the education, the opportunities, the global platform you now enjoy? Come now, Harry, surely you can acknowledge that your current ability to command attention and, frankly, to earn substantial sums of money is entirely dependent on your royal status. Without that, you'd be just another privileged young man with opinions. The gloves were well and truly off now. Harry leaned forward in his chair, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. You have no idea what you're talking about, Graham. You sit here, in your comfortable studio, making jokes and playing the entertainer, while people like me actually try to make a difference in the world. But I suppose cynicism and cheap shots get better ratings than genuine conversation about real issues. The insult to Graham's profession and integrity hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. The audience held its collective breath, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Graham's famous smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened with genuine anger. Cheap shots? Graham repeated slowly, his Irish accent becoming more pronounced as his own temper began to fray. I've been interviewing people for over 3 decades, Harry. I've spoken with world leaders, Nobel Prize winners, and yes, members of your family. The difference is, most of them understand that with great privilege comes great responsibility, including the responsibility to answer difficult questions with grace and humility. Don't lecture me about responsibility, Harry snapped, his composure finally cracking completely. You've never had the weight of expectation I've carried since birth. You've never had every mistake, every moment of pain, every private conversation scrutinized and twisted by a vicious press machine. You've built your career on gossip and celebrity nonsense, while some of us are trying to address serious global issues. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Production assistants were whispering urgently into their headsets, while Graham's regular viewers watched in fascination as their usually unflappable host faced off against an increasingly agitated member of the royal family. But this was only the beginning of what would become the most explosive talk show confrontation in television history, and Graham Norton was far from finished. Graham paused for a moment, allowing Harry's words to settle over the studio like toxic fog. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a steel edge that longtime viewers had rarely heard before. Celebrity nonsense? Graham repeated, his trademark warmth completely evaporated. Harry, I've interviewed your brother William multiple times. I've had conversations with your father, both as Prince of Wales and now as King. Do you know what they never did? They never sat in that chair and insulted me or my profession while simultaneously benefiting from the very platform they were criticizing. Harry's face darkened further, his hands now visibly trembling with barely contained rage. Don't you dare compare me to them. They've never faced what I've faced. They've never had to watch their wife be torn apart by racist coverage, while the palace stood by and did nothing. They've never had to choose between their family's safety and their duty to an institution that cares more about headlines than human beings. Ah, now we're getting somewhere, Graham said, leaning forward with predatory interest. Let's talk about choices, shall we? You chose to leave Britain. You chose to give up your royal duties. You chose to move to California and pursue commercial ventures. But somehow, every interview, every book, every Netflix series still comes back to how badly you were treated. At what point do you take responsibility for your own decisions instead of blaming everyone else? The question hit Harry like a physical blow. His face flushed red, and for a moment it seemed as though he might actually stand up and leave. The audience was completely silent now, witnessing what felt like a public psychological examination. Take responsibility? Harry's voice cracked with emotion and fury. I took the ultimate responsibility by removing myself and my family from a toxic situation. But I suppose that's not good enough for people like you, is it? You want me to shut up, disappear, and let the lies continue unchallenged? No, Harry, Graham replied with devastating calm. What people like me want is consistency. You can't simultaneously claim you want to be left alone while writing tell-all books. You can't demand privacy while doing reality television. And you certainly can't claim the moral high ground while attacking everyone who dares to ask you uncomfortable questions. The exchange was becoming increasingly personal, and Harry's media training was completely abandoned now. His voice rose to almost a shout. You think this is comfortable for me? You think I enjoy having to defend myself against people who twist everything I say? I came here tonight to talk about mental health awareness, about supporting veterans, about making a positive difference. But instead, you want to play gotcha journalism like some tabloid hack. Graham's famous composure finally cracked completely. His face hardened into an expression of cold anger that shocked everyone present. Tabloid hack? That's rich, coming from someone whose entire post-royal career has been built on tabloid-style revelations about his own family. At least tabloid journalists don't pretend their gossip is some noble crusade for truth and justice. How dare you? Harry exploded, half rising from his chair before catching himself. Everything I've shared has been to break the cycle of pain and silence that has plagued my family for generations. If that makes you uncomfortable, if that threatens your cozy relationship with the establishment, then maybe you're part of the problem. My cozy relationship with the establishment? Graham laughed bitterly. Harry, I'm a gay man from Ireland who spent years fighting for acceptance in an industry that didn't want people like me. I've never had anything handed to me on a silver platter. I've earned every opportunity through talent and hard work, not through accident of birth. The personal attack clearly stung Harry, who seemed to realize he had crossed a line, but his anger was too far gone to retreat now. Don't play the victim card with me, Graham. You've made millions entertaining people, while others have paid the real price for fame. You sit there in judgment while people like my mother paid with their lives for the entertainment of people like your audience. The mention of Diana sent a visible shock through the studio. Several audience members gasped audibly, and even Graham seemed momentarily taken aback by the raw emotion and accusation in Harry's voice. Your mother was a remarkable woman who understood both the privileges and responsibilities of her position, Graham said quietly, but his voice carried a warning tone. She used her platform to highlight important causes, yes, but she never turned her personal pain into a commercial enterprise. She maintained her dignity even in her darkest moments. Don't you dare speak about my mother, Harry shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. You didn't know her. You have no right to use her memory to attack me. She would be disgusted by what this institution has become, by how they've treated her sons, by how they allowed my wife to be vilified. Graham's eyes flashed with genuine anger now. I interviewed your mother, Harry, twice. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that she would be heartbroken to see one of her sons publicly attacking his own family while claiming to act in her memory. She spent her life trying to heal divisions, not create them. You're lying, Harry accused, his voice breaking with emotion. She never told me about any interviews with you. the World AIDS Day special in 1993, and a charity gala interview in 1996, Graham replied with cold precision. Both times, she spoke about her love for her sons and her hope that they would use their positions to bring people together, not tear them apart. She was gracious, dignified, and never once spoke ill of your father or the royal family, despite everything she had endured. The revelation hit Harry like a sledgehammer. His face went pale, then flushed again with what looked like embarrassment and rage combined. The audience watched in stunned silence as the Duke of Sussex appeared to grapple with information that undermined his entire narrative. That's different," Harry stammered, his confidence clearly shaken. "The situation was different then. Things have gotten worse. The racism, the attacks on Meghan, the institutional indifference." "Have they gotten worse, Harry?" Graham pressed, sensing weakness. "Or have you simply decided that the privileges of royal life aren't worth the responsibilities? Because from where I sit, it looks like you wanted all the benefits of being a prince with none of the obligations, and when you couldn't have that, you decided to burn it all down." Harry stared at Graham with undisguised hatred, his breathing heavy and labored. The careful prince was gone completely now, replaced by a man whose fury was barely contained. "You smug sanctimonious," he began, before catching himself at the last second. "Go on," Graham encouraged coldly. "Say what you really think. Show everyone the real Prince Harry, the one behind all the carefully crafted victim narratives and therapeutic buzzwords." The challenge hung in the air like a dare, and the entire studio held its breath waiting to see if Harry would take the bait. His PR team in the wings was making frantic gestures, but Harry seemed oblivious to everything except the man sitting across from him who had systematically dismantled his entire worldview in front of millions of viewers. But what happened next would push this confrontation beyond the point of any possible recovery, transforming a heated interview into a complete meltdown that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Harry's face contorted with pure rage as he finally snapped completely. "You want to see the real me?" he snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than his earlier shouting. "Fine. You're nothing but a pathetic entertainer who built his career on mocking people better than him. You think you're so clever with your little jokes and your smug superiority, but you're just another vulture feeding off other people's lives." The studio erupted in shocked gasps. Graham's eyes widened slightly, but his voice remained deadly calm. "There we are, the real Prince Harry. Not the wounded victim or the passionate activist, but an entitled brat who can't handle being challenged. Your grandmother would be ashamed." "Don't you ever mention my grandmother again!" Harry roared, actually rising from his chair this time. His finger pointed accusingly at Graham. "She's dead because of people like you." The constant scrutiny, the relentless pressure, the media circus that follows our family everywhere. You're all parasites. Graham stood up as well now, his own anger finally unleashed. "People like me? I'm a television presenter, Harry, not a tabloid photographer chasing your car through Paris. But you want to blame everyone except the person who's actually responsible for your current situation. Yourself." "Myself?" Harry's voice cracked with hysteria. "I was born into this nightmare. I never asked for any of it. And when I finally tried to escape, to build something better, people like you dragged me back down into the gutter." "You never asked for it?" Graham's voice dripped with contempt. "You never asked for the privilege, the wealth, the opportunities, the global platform? You just wanted the perks without the responsibilities. Well, life doesn't work that way, Your Royal Highness." The sarcastic emphasis on Harry's title was like pouring gasoline on fire. Harry's composure shattered completely as he began pacing behind his chair like a caged animal. "You think this is privilege?" Harry screamed, his voice echoing through the stunned studio. "You think growing up in a fishbowl, watching your parents' marriage fall apart in public, losing your mother to a system that treated her like entertainment, is privilege? You think having every relationship scrutinized, every mistake magnified, every private moment violated is privilege?" "Yes," Graham shot back without hesitation. Because millions of people face tragedy, divorce, and loss without palaces to retreat to, without trust funds to fall back on, without the ability to escape to California mansions when things get tough. Your pain doesn't make you special, Harry. It makes you human. But your response to that pain makes you selfish. The accusation hit Harry like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again, as he struggled to process the brutal assessment. Selfish? I've dedicated my life to service. I've worked with veterans, with mental health charities, with people who actually need help, while monetizing every moment of it. Graham countered relentlessly. Every charity appearance becomes content for your Netflix series. Every veteran you help becomes a story for your book. Every cause you champion becomes another speaking engagement worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. You've turned compassion into commerce. That's not true. Harry's voice was becoming hoarse from shouting. Everything we've done has been authentic. We've used our platform to amplify important voices. Your platform? Graham laughed harshly. You mean the platform you inherited through birth and then spent years attacking? The same institution you now distance yourself from while still using the title it gave you? Prince Harry, still trading on royal connections while condemning royal traditions. Harry's hands were shaking visibly now, his breathing rapid and shallow. We gave up everything. We walked away from the life we knew to protect our family. You gave up nothing, Graham exploded, his Irish accent thick with anger. You kept your titles, your security, your connections, your ability to command headlines whenever you need them. You just moved the operation to America and started charging admission. How dare you? Harry's voice broke completely now, tears of rage visible in his eyes. You sit there judging me while you've never faced a fraction of what I've endured. You've never had to choose between family loyalty and protecting the people you love. Family loyalty? Graham's voice was incredulous. You've spent the last 3 years publicly attacking your father, undermining your brother, and dragging your family's private business through international media. If that's your idea of loyalty, I'd hate to see betrayal. Harry stared at Graham with pure hatred, his chest heaving with exhaustion and fury. The carefully constructed public persona had been completely stripped away, revealing someone barely in control of their emotions. You don't understand, Harry whispered, his voice suddenly small and broken. None of you understand what it's like to feel trapped, to watch the people you love being destroyed by a system you can't escape. Then why didn't you just leave quietly? Graham asked, his voice softer now but still relentless. Why the books, the interviews, the constant public commentary? Why turn your private pain into public performance? Harry looked around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The cameras, the audience, the lights, all focused on him, waiting for his response. His PR team in the wings looked mortified, making cutting gestures across their throats. Because, Harry started, then stopped. His mouth opened and closed several times as he seemed to realize he had no good answer. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Because you can't let go, Graham said quietly, delivering the final blow with surgical precision. You can't leave the royal family, because being a prince is all you know how to be. So you've created this elaborate narrative where you're both victim and hero, both insider and outsider, both royal and rebel. But you can't have it both ways, Harry. At some point, you have to choose. Harry's face crumpled as the truth of Graham's words hit home. For a moment, he looked like a lost child rather than a grown man. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, his expression hardened into cold fury. You know what? Harry said, his voice deadly quiet, as he straightened his jacket with shaking hands. I don't have to sit here and listen to this character assassination from someone who makes a living out of cheap gossip and celebrity trivia. No, you don't, Graham agreed calmly, settling back into his chair. You could have left at any time. But you stayed because this is exactly what you wanted. Another platform, another opportunity to play the victim, another chance to blame everyone else for your choices. Harry's jaw clenched as he stared down at Graham with undisguised contempt. This interview is over, he declared, his voice carrying what he clearly intended to be regal authority. but came across as petulant defiance. "Actually," Graham said with devastating calm, "this is my show, and the interview ends when I say it ends. But please, by all means, storm off. Add another dramatic exit to your growing collection. I'm sure it will make excellent content for your next project." The final insult was too much. Harry's face contorted with rage as he leaned down toward Graham, his voice a harsh whisper that the microphones barely caught. "You'll regret this," he hissed, "when the truth comes out about what really happened, about what my family really did to us. You'll regret every word you said tonight." Graham looked up at him with complete composure. "The only thing I regret, Harry, is that your mother isn't here to see what you've become. She deserved better sons than this." Harry recoiled as if he'd been slapped. For a moment, raw pain flashed across his features before being replaced by cold hatred. Without another word, he turned on his heel and strode toward the studio exit, his security detail scrambling to keep up. "Ladies and gentlemen," Graham announced to the stunned studio and television audience as Harry's footsteps echoed through the suddenly quiet space, "Prince Harry has left the building. We'll be right back after this commercial break." As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed, the audience sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The most explosive talk show confrontation in television history was over, leaving nothing but shocked faces and the echo of bitter words that could never be taken back. The interview that was supposed to rehabilitate Prince Harry's image had instead exposed the raw anger and entitlement beneath his carefully crafted public persona, while Graham Norton had proven that sometimes the most devastating weapon against manufactured victimhood is simply the truth, delivered without mercy or compromise.